Look at the Uni-Fan AL120 version 2 from LianLi. Let's get right into the graphs and the data. So first up is the case simulation test. The case simulation test can be looked at in a couple key different ways, but the most important for you, the viewer, is what size case do you actually plan on buying. If you're looking at a small form factor or a very ultra compact case, again, front to back airflow with a CPU air cooler, the 6-inch mark is your key location. The 6-inch mark also is very representative of a short throw distance, meaning if you've got a case fan blowing air up into your GPU, that 6-inch mark would be representative of that. Next, we have the 9-inch mark. The 9-inch mark is represented by your compact towers. Think an MATX motherboard type case, so it'd be squatter and relatively short. It should fit a GPU the length of the motherboard, obviously for the MATX, but probably not much larger than that. I think of the Dell Optiplexes as that 9-inch mark. Then we have the 11-inch mark. The 11-inch mark is represented by your mid towers. Something like the Corsair 550D, Corsair 5000 series, Corsair Obsidian 500 series, the Fractal Meshify 2C, all represented by that 11-inch mark. Pretty much the most standard on the market right now. And then we have the 14.5-inch mark. This is represented by your large towers. Something like the Fractal Torrent is that 14.5-inch mark. So this would be your very epic large towers. So this distance that we're measuring is the distance from the back of the case fans to the rough position of the CPU socket. So where your air cooler would be located. So this data would be specifically important for CPU air coolers, where you'd see the biggest performance difference. I recently ran some tests in my computer, in my own case, adjusting the front fan speeds, leaving the bottom constant, and I saw over a 10-watt difference between no airspeed running through the case and 100%. So yes, airflow through your case to your CPU air cooler does make a difference because you're cycling the heat in and out of the case, as well as getting more air into that cooler. Because the fan works by sucking air through it, so it creates a minor vacuum on the front. And by having a fan force feeding air into this fan, basically filling that vacuum as quickly as it's generated allows this fan to operate more efficiently, thus improving overall temperatures. If you're going to be using fans on a radiator or AIO on the front of your case in a pull configuration, the airflow at the back will match the performance data that we're seeing out here, just the air velocities may be different. If you're going to be using the fans in a push configuration in the same sort of scenario, the radiator heatsink AIO will actually straighten out the airflow as it's traveling through it, so the air would be very streamlined. Now, the reason I bring this up is if your GPU is still air-cooled, you want to make sure that there's enough airflow to get to that GPU so that it stays nice and cool under your hot gaming environments. Now, back to what we're looking specifically here. Well, we're looking for a fan that has relatively slow decay in performance, so that's from the front of the case to the back of the case, a relatively slow performance drop overall. And, well, it looks okay, but let's compare it against something real. So I have a control fan. It is 3 parts A12H5 to 1 part A14. 140mm class fans like the A14 tend to do better at the 11 and 14.5-inch mark, while smaller 120s tend to do better at the 6 and the 9-inch mark. By blending the two fans together, I hope to create a perfect, quote-unquote, perfect fan to compare every other fan against. And so that's what I've done. Fans that are underneath it would be considered poor performers. Fans that are over top of it would be considered very good performance. Fans that are around it would be considered just fine and dandy. So my control fan I would consider good, but not great in terms of overall performance. So I have listed on here a bunch of other LianLi fans, but the one most of interest for this video is the AL120 version 2, and it is this blue line. It is very clear that this fan tends to spew air off to the sides without creating a nice focused airflow. I'm not sure why it's called AL, because I think the AL is supposed to stand for like airflow, while the SLs are supposed to be pressure optimized. So it's very clear to me that the AL is not airflow optimized. Otherwise, it would have a very concentrated airflow pattern, while the Infinity is actually significantly better than it. But all of them are pretty poor compared to my control fan. How about at 100%? Now, in general, if your case fans are running at 100% PWM fan signal, something has gone terribly wrong inside your case and it's overheating terribly. That being said, sometimes there's a case and scenario where you're running that fast. So let's take a look. Over on the key, we've got the fan, the RPM is running, and the noise level is generating. The AL120 is quieter than some of its brethren. Actually, the Infinity is a little bit quieter than it for a very similar RPM. How about for that performance? Well, the AL is moving more air than the other Uni-Fans, even given its noise value of being kind of okay, but it is still louder than what my control fan would have calculated been generating. So I'd call it okay. The Infinity, on the other hand, is pretty impressive. How about compared to other fans? First, noise normalized. So I do have the other Uni-Fans in here. I'm sorry, this graph is a little bit crazy, but here's the Infinity in this orange line. This yellow line that I'm tracing right now is the Wonder Snail. I consider that fan the bottom end of what I'd call a good case fan, and that is simply because it creates such a flat line, and it's so good at the 14.5 inch mark, relatively speaking. There are still fans better than it, but they have a much steeper drop-off compared to the Wonder Snail. So specific for this video, the AL120 version 2, it starts off actually pretty good at the 6 inch mark. So for a smaller case, it might be good, but as soon as you start getting farther away from it, it proves itself to be pretty poor in performance. It's not the worst, but it's not good either. How about at 100% PW fan signal? Well, the AL120 is the purple line now, and it is smack dab, kind of, I'm going to call it in the middle. It's technically upper middle with the number of fans I've tested, but compared to like the best in the category, it's a pretty far cry away from them. But compared to like the next major grouping of what I call good fans, it's right at the top. So it's doing okay. In terms of its noise at that level, well, there it is, 24.7. And we do see that it is slightly on the noisy side compared to the other fans around it. So that is a little bit unfortunate. Next, let's take a look at airspeed versus noise rating in decibels. As a note, every 10 decibels is a doubling in noise volume. So just because a line looks linear doesn't mean it is linear, because every 10 decibels is doubling. And the 9 inch mark was chosen because I need an airspeed over 0.5 meters per second in order to get a good, accurate reading. So I want to talk about future plans. I'm a little bit stuck, and I'm planning on keep making videos just the way I have, whether or not you all want to support me in a monetary sense. So, but money would get me to that next level. Unfortunately, the world relies on money. La 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 la. But basically what I'd like to do is I would like to buy a better microphone dedicated for noise testing, $250, I believe. Better anemometer, one that is more accurate to be able to register lower airspeeds and more accurate airspeeds, $500. I want to build a little test chamber for more accurate noise testing. Well, I don't know how much that'll cost, but I'm going to build it myself and do as good a job as I can, hoping to reduce my decibel readings into the 20s rather than right now in the 30s for ambient room noise. I want to build a little test system for doing my test analysis. All in all, it's like $2,000. That is just where I am. I'm being real with all of you. This is whether or not you subscribe to my Patreon, whether or not you become a member here on YouTube. I'm going to keep doing videos until I reach that dollar value, and when I do, I'm going to redo all my test analysis with that new testing methodology that I'll be able to do with all the new test equipment. Until I get there, I'll keep going with it the way I can, as best as I can. So I guess I want to thank you for any of your support that you're willing to do, and greatly appreciated. Let's get right back to the scheduled program. So we have the SL120 version 2 is this purple line, and it's pretty much flat. Don't buy it as a case fan, please. While the AL120 version 2 starts off actually really bad, and then it kind of gains ground. It's still low, but it's climbing nicely. And then, boom, I don't know what else to call that, but it basically must hit a very specific efficiency curve within the fan blade and blade design where it accelerates up and becomes actually pretty good for its noise value. Mine is at the bottom end, so it's not very good, but it becomes good, as I put it, for the amount of noise it's generating and the airspeed it's generating. So depending on what RPM you're running it, it's either crap or good. Base airflow testing would be done at each of the different markers for a given amount of time for the blade to reach steady state with the fan at the end. LianLi AL120v2. AL120v2 test. AL120 pull config. To a U12A. It is sort of halfway in between a high density radiator and a standard air cooler. At least I personally think it is. I would like to add radiator type testing to my future analysis, assuming I do get that funding. But this is where we are right now. And in both these two graphs, the better fans are going to be sitting top left, worse fans are going to be sitting bottom right. Again, we have my control fan, 3 parts A12X52, 1 part A14. And first and foremost, on the left side, we have RPM versus airspeed. This is a blade efficiency graph. It is how good is this blade design at shoving air to my CPU air cooler. The control fan is sitting right here, and we do see that the SL120v2 is matching or slightly over my control fan. And amazingly enough, the AL120v2 is as well. The Infinity SL is underperforming ever so slightly compared to my control fan in terms of its blade design. But how are they doing in terms of noise performance? Well, this is where it sits. We got my control fan in this blue line. And we do see that the Infinity matches my control relatively closely. The red line is the AL120v2. At lower RPMs, it pretty much matches my control fan, and then it fades away until much higher RPMs, where it actually kind of starts doing better again. While the purple is the SL120v2, it stays pretty far away, gets pretty close, and then, well, at higher RPMs, it drops way back. So, kind of okay-ish, I guess. Next, we have how it compares to everybody else. A little note, I did a whole series of tests where it allowed me on my CPU air cooler and my CPU, the i7-117K, where I was able to generate a graph to equate how much air speed traveling through my cooler with one fan on it equates to a wattage on the CPU itself. So it's just a fun little factoid. I do recommend that video. It was kind of a fun experiment. But this is the positional data for how the fans rank against each other, noise normalized. And so you might be wondering, how can you use this data? These airspeed measurements are only for your CPU cooler. And that is true, but it gives you relative position compared to other fans. So if, let's say, you started off with the Uni-Fan SL120 version 2, down here towards the bottom, if you upgraded to the A12X25, you'd be pushing a significantly higher amount of airspeed, which means if your CPU is unlocked, or overclocked, or whatever, you're going to be able to generate a higher wattage at that same noise level. Or if your CPU is locked, or clock speed limited, voltage limited, whatever it may be, your system is going to run cooler. Or you could take that PWM fan signal, back it off a little bit so the relative airspeeds match, and now your system is going to run quieter for the same wattage. So it just allows you to adjust it however you would like. And at 100% PWM fan signal, how do the fans rank? Well, the AL120 version 2 is outperforming its brethren, which is kind of funny. So it outperforms the SL Infinity, it outperforms the SL120 version 2. for its blade design, it's kind of remarkable actually. So that's just how it happened. So its airspeed is actually pretty good, but its noise level is a tad bit on the high side compared to other fans around it for its given RPM. It's not in a terrible position in terms of that noise, but it is a little bit on the loud side. And in terms of that cooler airspeed through the cooler versus decibel rating, right here, so it starts off okay, kind of dropping towards the back, finally hit an efficiency point, and it kind of catches up. And it catches up pretty well at its maximum RPM, and at, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So at 70% PW fan signal is where it hits its peak efficiency. So it's like 70% and 100% are its kind of two good points. But other than that, it's a little bit underimpressive or unimpressive overall. The Infinity has more in line with other fans, but it's got these weird joggles in it. So there are other fans that have a much smoother curve, so it's better overall, even though it may end up in a worse position, kind of. So like the SL120 version 2, this orange line, kind of is worse down here, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at 60% and higher until 90%, it does really well, or not, maybe not really well, but does better than the other LianLi fans. So you kind of have, using that as an example, you have to choose to explain. To do CFM testing, you have a fan. The fan is the same size as the tube. You blow air down the tube. The air has no room to expand, so all the air travels down the tube. So a fan that has a constant airflow has a tendency to outperform one that has a tendency to blow air off to the sides because of the amount of momentum within the air traveling down the tube. And you'd register the airspeed to get CFM. It's just a cubic feet per minute, so you need the surface area, so pi r squared times feet per minute, and you get CFM. So the reason I don't like this test is you may get the order of the fans correct, meaning high CFM to low CFM, high performance to low performance. But the relative difference between a fan that has high performance and low performance may look much closer in this sort of test than it does in my case simulation test, which is why that case simulation test is so important. It gives the air room to expand, so you actually see how it does. Now, CFM testing, if you want to do it scientifically, meaning to generate PQ curves, perfectly valid. Recommend it. Anything else? Don't. Any reviewer who says this fan is good for case airflow because high CFM doesn't understand the science. I'm an actual aerospace engineer with a strong background in computational fluid dynamics. It is an area of my master's. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say without sounding like I'm bragging. So RPM versus CFM, blade efficiency, and they're perfectly in line with each other. It's like case and point. In terms of noise performance, finally you see a separation, and we do see that the AL120 is worse than my control fan. How about comparing to other fans? Well, here the Infinity is doing really well. The AL120 is middle of the pack, and the SL120 is at the bottom of the pack. And at 100% PWM fan signaling, the AL is pretty much in the middle of the graphs. So it's not a bad result, but it's in the middle of the graphs. And for point of reference, here's the A12X25, which is largely considered the best all-round fan. So its performance isn't that far off of the A12X25 in 100% PWM fan signaling. Now, how does the graph look CFM versus decibel rating? Well, here it is. The Uni-Fan AL120 version 2 is sitting kind of towards the bottom end of this graph, so it is a bit on the noisy side for how much performance. All right, now that we've finished going over all the performance data, let's do our open box experience. So the fan comes in this box, and in the box we get bubble wrap, which is what the fan actually comes in. We got some screws, and well, that's it. Actually, it does come with, in the single pack, it comes with an adapter from LianLi's custom connector to adapt it to your standard RGB header, which I actually really like. It allows me to do my testing. So, like all RGB fans, it does have two cables. However, LianLi does things slightly differently. They have their custom connector, which you plug the fan into right there. And this just plugs in. And so you can get that pretty nice and flat so it'll fit nice and tight against whatever else. And then if you have them more than one of these fans, you can daisy chain them to connector by sliding them into place, and the contacts will hit the little pins there, and you'll be able to daisy chain all the fans together and have all the power and RGB control basically synced up between them. The frame itself is a box frame, meaning it's nice and square. You can seal them, well, actually they connect this way with the brackets. So they connect to create a nice pressure block so that air won't seep out around it. But because of this basic design, it is wider. It sticks out more than a standard PC fan. Just the frame itself is bigger. So be aware that depending on what kind of case you have, it may be harder to fit this in specific spots because of interference with this kind of stuff. So it may depend a lot on your orientation. That being said, you probably want this side forward, but again, you could have a tight interference fit on the side or this side. Sorry about the reflections you're getting. The frame itself does have these rubber pads on it, and they are on both sides. Like we said, this is a nice little piece of artistic metal to improve the appearance, because that's basically what LianLi is going for here, is a good looking fan, to be the maybe not the most high performance out there, but the best looking. So definitely an appearance first, performance second is my opinion of LianLi with their fans currently. So with regard to that, the fan blades themselves, this is a thicker fan hub, or not hub, that's the middle, frame. So the fan blades themselves are smaller than a standard 120mm fan, which does reduce the performance in airflow. However, in a pressure application, you're not going to notice it nearly as much, and the back of the frame does diffuse the air. Well, the posts on the back of the fan blade are actually kind of at this weird angle. Most fans, I'd recommend them being kind of as vertical as possible and as thin as possible so that they don't obstruct the airflow very much. But these are at a pretty extreme angle, actually would deflect the airflow. And they're pretty wide, so they're, well, that means they'd be very strong. But it would reduce the airflow on it, but it also redirects it. So it's kind of a interesting thought there. But all of that said, this is, I've said before, appearance first. So between the metal hub, accent on the hub, the blades themselves are very basic. They're pretty much nothing to write home about. They are they're more airflow focused, but kind of this blend between airflow and pressure. So they are wider fan blades, more like from another era. But not too bad overall. The distance between the blades and the hub is also fairly good, I would say. But there's just no real features on it. They have a nice smooth edge leading to the back. So it's not particularly sharp there. Just smooths right in, and they're not particularly curved either. So it's getting all the airflow more or less from the angle of the blade themselves. There is some curvature towards the tip, but on the inside it's basically just flat. So it's fine. It's pretty unremarkable in most regards, but it certainly would do an just fine job, as we saw from the data. And it's up to you whether you prefer the appearance or want more performance. And speaking of appearance, let's jump into the RGB. So first off, I have it in a fixed color so that I can count how many RGB LED lights are in the central hub. I counted 8, which is great for color mixing, which I'm going to turn on right now. So basically this just turns off automatic control and does the rainbow appearance. So the more LEDs that are inside the hub or around the fan itself allows for better color mixing, so that the change in color isn't quite as jarring, because it allows for more in-between colors. So like as it's cycling from green to a blue to purple, let's say, you can have more subtle colors between each one because you have an extra light to be an extra light source to change its color. So I view that as a real bonus when you're buying an LED fan, but it is up to you whether it is worth the extra cost or if the performance is up to your standards for the amount of money you're spending on it. And I can't make that decision for you. That is all up to you. I'm here to basically more or less empirical. I prefer the data, but I don't mind artistic looking fans either. But right now my case doesn't have much RGB in it. Talking more about this fan, it does have LED lights around the frame. It's impossible to know how many light bulbs, LEDs, are basically in there, but I would say it's a sufficient number, and well, it adds a nice kind of aesthetic to the fan. There's nothing on the side, and if you're curious what it looks like, whoops, I got my cables all messed up, what it looks like from the back, that's what it looks like. So they applied the lights to it, and they gave a light in the central ring just to make the back look a little bit nicer because you do have the frame back there. Probably one of the better looking fans from the back because of that overall appearance. So I think it's fine, sufficient. But it's up to you if this is the appearance of the fan that you like the best. Alright, let's jump into the value proposition of this fan. First, the AL120 version 2 is a $41 fan based off of standard retail pricing that I could find on Amazon. That is the way all these fans are registered, off of retail pricing that I could locate on Amazon. So value proposition is a real simple calculation. It is performance per dollar. So bigger is better. So if you're an ultra tight budget, you want to get the best value proposition possible. If you do have a little bit of extra wiggle room in your budget, I do recommend taking a look at the earlier graphs, comparing it to your value proposition to get the fan that hits the best ratio of performance, of true performance to value that works for you. And this leads me into that extra. So that performance that hits the performance that you want. So that extra is raw performance, so airspeed, noise performance, physical appearance, and or RGB. And it's up to you to determine which extra for the value proposition is worth it to you. I can't make those decisions for you. I can only present the data. So in value, the AL120 version 2 noise normalized is crap. It's really bad. It's dog shit. So in terms of 100%, it's still really bad. At the 11-inch mark, it's not the worst. There are other fans that had no airspeed, but no. At 100% pitot fan signaling, it's still no. So CFM testing, noise normalized, pretty bad. 100%, pretty bad value. There are other fans that are better value. And through the CPU air cooler, very bad. So, is this fan a good value? In any test, absolutely not. This fan is terrible value. Do I think it looks cool? Well, this is my opinion. I think if I were to get a LianLi fan, I'd get one of the Infinity series. So there you have it. The AL120, in terms of its actual performance, well, I wouldn't get it for anything larger than a compact tower. So, yeah, there's that. So if you're looking at anything larger than a compact tower and you're going to air cool it, ignore it in case airflow. For CPU air cooling, it's okay, but a bit on the noisy side. Its value is horse poop, though. So where does that leave me with this fan? It's overpriced. That's the end result. Drop the price by $10 and you may have a good fan here, LianLi. With every video, I do like to show off my raw data. This data does belong to me. It takes me around 1.5 to 2 hours to generate this level of detail in my data. And as we progress through the evolution of this channel, I expect more testing to take me longer to do, which is perfectly fine. I love collecting data, which is why I did it and started doing this fan testing, because I was very unhappy with the way other reviewers were testing out fans. No one seemed to understand, like, fundamentally the way fans work and how to analyze them. So I decided to throw my hat into the YouTube algorithm. Anyways, you are welcome to use this data however you would like, as long as it is for yourself. So you can put it into your own Excel table, calculate it out, create your own graphs, whatever you would like to do. However, if you want to use it in any sort of video, publication, written, or journal, I do ask that you reference me and my channel. If you wish to make a reaction video to my video, I do ask that you talk to me first. It's probably going to be just fine with me, but hey, it's good to ask first. If you got suggestions on way I can improve my video to make it more enjoyable to watch, please leave that in the comment sections down below. I am always trying to improve my videos. It just may take a little bit of time for me to implement the changes because I do a lot of recording all at once as I do like groupings of buying fans by like 10. So that means 10 reviews all at once, and then publishing all at once, and then seeing your comments all at once, or distributed over 10 weeks. So it may take time for these changes, suggestions to implement into future videos, but I do try to make them more enjoyable to watch. If you got suggestions for fans for me to take a look at, please leave those in the comment section down below. I will try to get my hands on it to take a look at. I do ask they be available on Amazon, as that is the easiest way for me to acquire fans right now. Other than that, please join me on Patreon or join me as a YouTube member. Any and all support that you all give through that resource goes directly into this fan testing right now. It would be upgrading all that stuff I talked about earlier. Other than that, I'll keep going as I'm going, and thank you very much for making it this far in the video. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope to see you next time on Computer Tech and More. Have a great day.